Chapter 47. The three agents were quiet on the ride back to Thomas's parents' house. The decision to stay the few days at Thomas's old home gave Maddie a sense of security. It was nice not having her home empty, even if it was only for a few days. "Anyone hungry? We could stop for pizza or something," Thomas said, breaking the chill that was firmly lodged in the car. Owens jumped at the chance. "It's already 4. Let's eat. I'm starved." "Sure, pizza is fine," Dr. Thurston agreed. Thomas flipped on his blinker, headed for the next exit, methodically drove to the pizza shop, and parked the car. The men followed him into the restaurant and silently took their seats. A pitcher of beer was ordered, and they each took their turn visiting the salad bar. Thomas filled his glass and gulped his beer. The sudden rush of cool alcohol immediately eased his nerves. "God, I needed that," he exclaimed, wiping his mouth with his cloth napkin. The aroma of cooking Italian food made him very hungry, and he suddenly realized that they hadn't eaten since breakfast. The anticipation of familiar boyhood food in a familiar boyhood restaurant made him feel warm and safe. He was glad to be home again and wished he had never moved away. "What the hell was that back there?" Owens blared out abruptly, interrupting Thomas's enjoyment of his food and drink and thoughts. "What was what?" Thomas asked, with a mouthful of spring salad. "Jesus, man, you were making no sense in the beginning, and then that, 'yeah, that's fair' bullshit. We need that girl's name, and we need it now." Owens grabbed his beer and took a huge gulp. When the drink hit his empty stomach, he felt a little calmer. Dr. Thurston sat quietly enjoying his beer and salad and listened to the conversation between his two partners unfold. He felt it best to just sit for now, in case he had to become a mediator later. "You're right, I backed off, and I know it," Thomas said softly, feeling he had to defend himself. "But I've known this man almost my whole life. He's like a grandfather to me. It's obvious that he knows, or at least suspects someone, and that someone is probably pretty close to him. I'm sure he just wants to check it out first before jumping to any conclusions, that's all. And I'm giving him the time and space to do just that." He took another gulp. "It's called respect, Terry." "What if he tells her and she runs?" Owen adds. "I know this man. He won't do that." "I hope to hell you're right," Owen said, finishing his salad and gulping his beer. The three agents had inhaled their salads before they realized it. The waitress brought them another pitcher of beer and announced that their pizza was almost done. Dr. Thurston tried to calm the situation. "We're all getting a little jumpy right about now. Let's go home, rest up, and revisit all this tomorrow. Maybe Dr. Lewis will have something for us soon. We're all tired. We'll feel better when we've eaten." The waitress appeared with the steaming food. "Here you go," she said, setting the extra-large pizza, topped with everything, in the middle of their table. Suddenly the anger was gone, and all attention was focused on the melted cheese and wonderful aroma. "This is great pizza," Owen said through a mouthful. "I know," Thomas replied, enjoying the large piece in front of him. "That's why I brought you here. This place kept me alive during my college years." They finished their meal and headed for Thomas's home. Although they had been there the night before, they really hadn't seen much since they had arrived so late. They jumped right into bed and left early the next morning. So Owens and Thurston's were anxious to see where and how Thomas was raised. The car came to a stop in the driveway of the large, impressive older home. The gardener looked like he was adding some finishing touches to the front garden when the car doors slammed shut. "Hey, Roy!" Thomas yelled from the driveway. Roy, now in his late 80s, still worked for Maddie. He squinted toward the car as the sun slowly set on that cold winter day. "What are you doing, Roy?" "There's snow on the ground. Time to let the garden sleep," Thomas hollered, walking toward the old man. "Oh, hello, Toby. I'm just making sure the bushes here don't freeze. Sometimes I have to add more mulch or wrap them if it gets too cold. I like to keep an eye on them. How was your meeting?" "Fine. We just had dinner and we're ready to settle in. Are you staying much longer?" "Oh, no, sir. I'm ready to leave. Just double-checking a few things." "No rush, Roy. Take your time. Let me know if you need anything." "Will do, sir." Thomas joined his partners on the front porch of the huge old house. He unlocked the door and they moved to get out of the cold. A fire was blazing in the fireplace, and the light was on in the kitchen. Susan must be here. Thomas headed for the kitchen to talk with the housekeeper. The other two agents darted for the warmth of the fire to melt the chill that by now had settled deep into their bones. Thomas reappeared carrying glasses and a bottle of bourbon. "Here, this might help." He handed each a glass. They sipped and talked for a few minutes before deciding to take a short tour of the house. They had almost finished with the downstairs when they entered the small office in the back of the house. "This used to be a laundry room before the house was renovated," Thomas explained. "Now it's my parents' office and study." The room was of average size, with 2 desks, bookcases, and pictures on the walls. Owens was admiring the pictures of the 2 boys. "That's my little brother Charlie," Thomas said. "We're several years apart. He's quite a character." Then Owens came across a photo that immediately gained his attention. It was a black and white of a young boy playing in the mud. "Oh, that's me," Thomas said. "My mom was in a photography class one time and took that picture. She developed it and everything. I think her grade is printed on the back. I think she got an A for that one." He stood by Owens, admiring the photo. "You must have been a handful," Owens said. Dr. Thurston peeked between the 2 agents and looked at the picture. For some strange reason it seemed familiar, but it would have been impossible for him to have seen it before. Still, it was concerning. Thomas looked over at him with questions in his eyes, and Thurston answered, "Ah, what a little darlin'. Very funny. Come on, guys. I'll show you the upstairs." The agents finished their tour and decided it was time for sleep. Tomorrow they would try one more time to get information from Dr. Lewis, but none really held much hope for that effort. Chapter 48. A chill ran up Maddie's spine, and she shivered in the warm Florida morning sun. "What's wrong, Mad?" Nate asked. "Nothing, just a feeling. I'm so glad we decided to bring the kids. This has really been a fun vacation." They strolled slightly behind the 3 children, although Charlie was almost a grown man. At 17, he was as handsome as his father, and his cousins were blossoming into beautiful young ladies at the ripe old age of 5 and 6. They were 18 months apart, but could almost pass as twins, except Jessie was a little taller than Kelly. Their sandy red, waist-length hair was bound in pigtails that bounced as they walked. They were munching on pretzels and teasing and pushing each other and just having a darn good time. All 3 of them were very close, and although Charlie was much older than the girls, he really adored them and never excluded them from anything he was doing. He loved them dearly and enjoyed every minute of their presence. "Nate," Maddie observed, "either our son is truly a wonderful young man, or he's the weirdest teenager in the world." "Why do you say that?" Nate asked as they watched the children play in front of them. "He's almost 18, but he really enjoys those little girls. Is that normal at his age?" "I don't see why not. Marlena babysat him almost his whole life until they moved to D.C., so those little girls are almost sisters to him. He's been with them ever since they were born. He just has a very big heart, that's all. You may say he looks like me, but his heart is definitely from his mother." He put his arm around Maddie's shoulder and kissed her cheek. Nate's cell phone beeped and sang its familiar tune. "Now who could this possibly be?" he asked as he snatched it off his belt and hit the talk button. "Hello?" Maddie instantly had a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. She knew something was wrong, but wasn't sure what. That morning she had woken with a feeling of impending doom. Her intuitions were usually never wrong, and she was just waiting for the moment to occur that would once again change her life forever. She suddenly knew this was that moment. Nate walked over to an empty spot by the lake to talk privately, and Maddie hollered for the kids to wait up. They were touring Epcot Center this morning. It was their second visit to that park that week. They'd only made it through half the park earlier, and the girls enjoyed it so much they wanted to make sure they saw the rest of it before their vacation ended. Maddie and the children approached Nate, who had a very worried look on his face and was listening intently to whoever was on the other end. Maddie suddenly thought of Toby and hoped nothing had happened. They stood quietly, watching Nate as his features changed from worry to anger and back to worry again. The call ended as quickly as it arrived, and Nate turned away from his family to stare out over the lake. Maddie knew something was terribly wrong, so she handed Charlie some money and asked him to take the girls into Mexico for a little while. They'd catch up with him at the exit. Charlie wanted to know what was wrong, but he knew he had to give his parents some time to talk. He was confident they'd tell him later, but he would soon be proven wrong. He grabbed the two little hands and announced that it was shopping time. The girls giggled and skipped happily alongside their uncle, anxious to have some fun. "What is it, Nate?" Maddie asked, putting her hand on his shoulder. She leaned against his arm and held back the tears. She was now scared. "It's not Toby, sweetie. He's fine, but we've got to talk. Let's find a seat." When they found a spot where they could see the kids exiting the Mexico exhibit, Maddie saw tears in Nate's eyes. "Talk," she said sternly. That was Jeff. Dr. Lewis. "Oh my, I've been found out, haven't I?" "Worse. The agency wants you gone. Dead." "That's their way." She paused. "Now what do we do?" "We have to head straight back when we're through here. We can finish out the week, but then it's straight home. Jeff has an idea, but we'll be doing it alone." They sat quietly, just holding hands. They'd always known this scenario was a possibility, but to actually live it was another matter. People walked down the path in front of Maddie and Nate, but they were oblivious to all the noise and movement of the crowd. They were terrified. Nate only wanted to get home to see what scheme Dr. Lewis was cooking up, and how it would save his precious Maddie. Chapter 49. Dr. Lewis sat in his office on that cold evening, watching the snow fall over the unprepared city. The early showers were not expected to last but a day, but the icy roads closed down most of the city and the surrounding suburbs. He recollected his thoughts and realized he was not going to be able to pull off his plan without additional help. It was time to consult Dr. Bloomsbury. Lewis punched in his number, hoping he would be home. It was late, but not that late, and Bloomsbury answered. "Hello?" a meek voice squeaked. "Darnell?" Lewis asked. "Yes, this is Dr. Bloomsbury." The young doctor did not like to be called by his first name, and always preferred the more formal approach. "Darnell, this is Jeff Lewis." "Yes, doctor. Is something wrong?" "I'm afraid something is terribly wrong. I need to see you at once. Will you come to my office, please?" "Now?" "Yes, now. This cannot wait." "Very well. I'm on my way." Lewis hung up the phone and continued to watch the snow. The purity of the falling, gleaming crystals gave a false sense of serenity. Yep, the calm before the storm. Chapter 50. Carrie and Snyder stared at each other from across the table. They weren't sure whether to share what they found or wait for the others to get back. Carrie glanced at her watch. It was 8:15 a.m. She decided some fresh coffee would taste good about now. As the pot brewed behind her and the strong aroma filled the room, Snyder pulled his notes and folders from his briefcase and sighed. He was beyond tired. He was exhausted. "I collected some interesting data," he said. "Should we discuss it?" "Why not? Let's go over what we've got, and maybe we can have some ideas ready for the others when they get back. Let's see if we can have anything that matches." Carrie poured herself a cup. "Would you like one?" "Nah, that's all I've been drinking lately. I probably should cut back." He flipped through his papers. "Oh, I did get a picture of our mysterious temporary girl," Carrie proudly announced as she turned to Snyder, taking a sip and then blowing on the steaming brew. "It's not real good, though. Kind of blurry." "I did, too," Snyder eagerly added, getting excited again. Together they carefully ran through their documents to locate and share their newly found treasures, the small 1-inch photos. Snyder's photo was a photocopy and wasn't very clear. "Can't tell much by yours," Carrie said, disappointed. "He didn't have the original like she did. I have it electronically. Maybe that will be better. They scanned the photo for me before I left." "Hey, let's scan mine and compare the two. We can digitally enhance them." "Not a bad idea." The two worked together, scanning in the small photo of the suspected killer, and carefully worked with the photo program to enhance and clarify each one. They soon had both photos side by side on the computer screen. "Well, what do you think?" Snyder asked. Not real sure. There is a resemblance, but my young lady is a beauty. My God, she's gorgeous. Yours has a very plain look about her. Not ugly, just plain. And look at those glasses. Coke bottles. I know, she sure doesn't add anything to her looks. In fact, they almost seem fake. It may have been deliberate, to make her look less beautiful, and it worked. Mine had a child. Name started with a T. Tommy or Timmy or something like that. Mine didn't have any children. She was fresh out of college. I'll scan some local colleges near the compound in Georgia and see if there was ever an Ida Grainsberger registered. Not a bad idea, Thurston agreed. I can check out some daycare centers and see if there was ever a T. Maxwell registered. He would have been about 5, kindergarten age. Sounds good. I'm going to review King's autopsy report again, Carrie said, taking in a deep breath. She was slowly winding down and was ready for a long night's sleep. I ordered one, and we should have it any day now. I also ordered your 2 murder victims' reports. Hey, thanks. Didn't think of that. Carrie, what do you think all this means? He asked, starting to feel vulnerable. I don't know, Snyder, but I believe whoever's behind all of this is entwined deeply within our government. They'd have to be. Who else could do such things and get away with it? I believe a lot of eyes are being told to look in another direction. You mean like those at the IRS who ignored the senator's extra income? Exactly. The phone rang and both agents jumped. Agent Clark, Carrie sighed into the receiver after the first startling ring. Carrie, Thomas here. We're stuck in Oklahoma for a couple of days. I was watching the weather on TV, so I kind of figured that. Isn't it too early for this type of a storm? No, sometimes this happens. If that Arctic air feels like dipping down low enough, we get a good showering of this white stuff. Snyder said it was pretty cold in Michigan, too. He was very glad to get back here. It's not too cold right now. It's about 66. Sunny and dry. Great. Just what I wanted to hear. We have nothing concrete yet, but we do believe that Dr. Lewis, the director of executives, knows or at least suspects someone. He won't release any names until he can do a little investigation of his own. I can't blame him for that. No reason to jump to conclusions. When are you coming back? As soon as they allow the planes to take off. Probably tomorrow. You and Snyder review what you have, and we'll add to it when we return. Anything else going on? No, pretty quiet. I'll call you if we need anything. Please do, and be safe. As Carrie hung up, the intercom announced that they had a visitor in the lobby, a Robert James Wilson, Jr. It was the deceased senator's eldest son. Both agents glanced at each other and shrugged their shoulders, then headed for the lobby. Their visitor was signing the guest book, and Carrie immediately recognized him. Junior? She asked as she approached. Hello, Agent Clark. Nice to see you again. I was supposed to come in a few weeks, but my mother's not doing so well. She's really taken all this very hard. He shook Carrie's hand with a somber expression. Junior, this is Agent Snyder. He's also on the case. Nice to meet you, sir. Same here, Snyder said, shaking Junior's hand. Snyder felt he was looking into the past when he saw Junior, for he was an identical copy of his deceased father, only younger. Carrie asked the receptionist if the secure conference room was available. As they headed down the hall, they stopped in the kitchen so Junior could get something to drink. They sat in the conference room and talked for a few minutes about life and what was new or exciting. It was obvious that Junior was very concerned about his mother and was eager to get back to her. He explained how urgent business had kept him in New York a little longer than he'd expected, and now he was stuck on the East Coast because of the sudden storms. I told Agent Edward I'd come that following week after you visited our home, but I just couldn't leave her alone. You understand, don't you? He bowed his head, and it was obvious he was very worried about his mother's health. Of course we do, Snyder said. At a loss for words, he decided it best to change the subject. You're a lawyer, correct? Yes, sir, corporate attorney. I specialize in espionage and the protection of intellectual property, mostly patents and copyright infringements. You know, the real boring stuff. Well, that doesn't sound boring to me, Carrie said with enthusiasm, trying to cheer him up. It's not as exciting as what you two do, he responded. Carrie downplayed their assignments. What we do can be very boring at times. Thomas isn't here. He and two of our other partners are stuck in Oklahoma. That freak snowstorm. I know how they feel. I can't get home right now either, so I thought this would be an excellent time for me to stop by. Agent Clark, I guess I can share with you what I have. It doesn't have to be with Agent Edwards. Oh, call me Carrie, please. Thanks, Carrie. I have this tape. It was supposed to have been delivered along with the other one you received the first time, but I had to make sure my mother knew nothing about it. Is it from the surveillance cameras? Snyder asked, excited again with the possibility of new evidence. It's not from the house, Agent Snyder. It's from his office. After my father's death, I immediately went to his office and switched this tape with the new one. I've always known about my father's affairs with other women, but I honestly never thought it would kill him. He slowly handed the tape to Carrie, staring at it as though it was an exploitation of his family's personal vulnerability. Did you ever meet any of these ladies, Junior? Carrie asked in a sympathetic voice. I saw the most recent one, a beautiful woman with a beautiful personality. I can honestly say I could see what he saw in her. She's on this tape. Carrie realized that Junior was deeply sorrowful, and she wanted to reach out to him. He was carrying a lot of the family burden right now, and she wasn't sure how to approach him or what to say to console him. Thank you. I know how hard this must be for you. No, thank you, Carrie. Just find out who did it and get that person, please. I'm sorry, but I really must go now, and I am sorry that I don't have anything else to share. You've been a great help. They continued to talk as Carrie escorted Junior out of the building and to his car, while Snyder searched anxiously for a television and VCR to view the tape. When Carrie returned, Snyder had the system ready to go and was nervously waiting for her return. Thought you'd never get here, he exclaimed, tapping his foot and reaching for the play button. The tape fluttered a few seconds, and then a silent movie of the senator's empty private office in Ohio was displayed. Snyder yawned and stretched, trying to get comfortable in the small, rigid chair. I hope this is nothing like those other surveillance tapes. That damn stuff put me right to sleep. Shouldn't be. This tape is only a few hours long. Carrie grinned. It seemed the agents did not have long to wait. Within a few short minutes, the senator strolled into his office, sat at his desk, and was reviewing files. His daily routine was being replayed for them, answering phones. About 30 minutes into the tape, an attractive, mature woman entered the senator's office. She looked to be in either her late 40s or early 50s, with dark shoulder-length black wavy hair and a slender body. They could only see the top of her head. She never turned to allow the camera to capture her face. Smart lady. She has to know the camera is there, Snyder said. Look, watch her now. See how she exits the room, always making sure her back's to the camera. He was rewinding and replaying the woman's movements. That has got to be our girl, Carrie said. She's being too cautious. No one walks into or out of a room like that on purpose. We should be able to get a good idea of her height and weight from this video. I'll send it over to forensics and request an analysis. A good idea, but we'd better ask Tom if it's okay first. He said not to trust anyone, remember? You're right. Let's wait until he gets back. He'll want to see all of this anyway.